Ethics video begins now. These past 5 years have been more about high school than anything else, which is why most of this video is going to be about my experience in high school, my ups and my downs. I think my high school career has been defined by my mistakes and my failures more than my successes, but I think these failures are something I learned from and something I was able to use to improve myself over these past 5 years. So, without any further ado, let's jump right into my first year of high school, Secondary 1. Well, to begin with, I got to high school with little to no friends, which I didn't really mind. One of the first things I remember is getting glasses, because without them, I could see pretty much nothing. This is how I met Asgar, one of my best friends to this day. Because I had to sit closer to the board, I had to switch spots with him, which is how we met. It also helped that we both loved video games and manga and stuff. Another great friend I met back then was Alex Barbeau. My first memory of him is seeing him with snot dribbling down his face. My intuition told me that we would be great friends, and it was right. We both liked video games and manga and all things weird. The Quebec trip was also a thing that happened. But the most marking moment during Sec 1 was the rude awakening to the high school reality. In elementary school, tests were a breeze. Nothing was much of a challenge and good marks were easy to come by. And there was practically no memorization. Our first high school test was memorizing the first 20 elements. I hardly studied. I always got 100 in science anyway. But I failed that test. I got a 55 to be exact. It was my first failure on a test ever. But I bounced back. I learned to study for the next tests and not make the same mistakes, which I didn't. Even though I still can't remember the first 20 elements, I got the highest mark in chemistry last year, which is a success to be sure. And that was pretty much Sec 1. Sec 2, the sequel. I don't think I failed any more tests in Sec 2, but a lot of stuff still happened. Like the ski trip. That was lots of fun. However, what really marked Sec 2 for me was this particular girl, who I shall name as Shoestorm. Shoestorm was very smart and, frankly, kinda scary. We had this nice conversation about the group mentality of our fellow classmates during that god-awful karaoke session during the ski trip, which is one of my favorite high school memories. Anyway, Shoestorm would become the inspiration for many of my characters. Speaking of characters, I liked to create my own stories and my own characters in Sec 2, even if I never finished them. The one I had back in Sec 1 and 2 was a fantasy epic named The Legend of Huzzah. It was about that time that a teacher told me off for drawing in class. This was one mistake I never learned from, even if I stopped drawing in her class for the rest of that year. I'd do it during her class this year just to prove that she can't stop me. At the end of the year, I also joined Bardolaters, which was pretty neat. Sec 3. Sec 3 was a really big year for me. It was the year of the new challenger, math. Math had never really been much of a problem for me, but this year it came out swinging. I did terribly on the first couple of tests, and I struggled to get my assignments in on time. But once I noticed the mistake I was making, not putting enough time to study and practice math in general, I once again got myself afloat. Not that I had great marks to show for it or anything, but at least I didn't fail anymore. Sec 3 was also the year I made new friends. Josh, Jordan, Spencer, Zach, and a few more. So these friends and I decided to put together a Discord server. Discord is kind of like Facebook, but for gamers, which makes it cooler. Discord was great. It was a great place to hang out, share memes, and shoot back inside jokes, like the coelacanth or the glow cloud, which I had absolutely nothing to do with whatsoever. And all of this really brought us closer together. But Sec 3 was also the year of Bardolaters. I played in 2 plays that year and I loved it, even if I had second to no lines. Even so, I had a lot of trouble memorizing even the little lines I had. But if Bards has taught me one thing, is that you need to learn from your mistakes. If you forget a line, you know you need to work on that part of the speech until you get it right. Find where you are weakest in the script, where you make the most mistakes, and work on it. Try and try again. practice makes perfect. And this is why I think Bardolaters is one of the successes of my high school career, because it really taught me the value of hard work through the memorization of hundreds of lines, but also because of how much fun I had acting. Washington was also a thing that happened. Sec 4, the big year, or so they told us. Sec 4 wasn't really as bad as some people made it out to be. Not much really happened. Boston was a bit of a bore. So since I don't have much to say about Sec 4, let's talk about art instead. Art is another big part of high school for me, and it's another example of how important it is to learn from your mistakes. If I've improved over the years, it's because I've noticed what I needed to work on, found my mistakes, and worked to fix them. And I do definitely believe I've improved at least a little bit from Sec 1 to now. Onwards to Sec 5, the grand finale. Sec 5 didn't really start well at all. I had a falling out with one of my friends, and I do believe I was more than partially responsible for it. When he came forward with terrible news about a mutual friend of ours, I reacted in a very inconsiderate way, as if I didn't really care. In that moment, I didn't really think about how my friend would feel, how he'd react, and I really upset him. I now realize how big of a mistake this was, and I think I've learnt from this mistake. I try to acknowledge how other people are feeling, and I do my best not to upset anybody with inappropriate reactions. It's the least I can do. Even though the experience was a negative one, I still think I learned and I grew from it, which I think is the most important part. And we're friends again too, so all's well that ends well. Sec 5 also brought me my whacked up sleep schedule. The failure to get a good night's sleep is an experience I have yet to fix. But hey, the school year is almost over and I think I can make it, but it's something I truly intend on working on in the future. One experience I did learn from, however, was the UN debate. Never again am I going to pull an all-nighter. I didn't fall asleep during the debate, but on the ride home, I fell asleep on the train and went all the way to St. Jerome. In other news, New York happened, and that was kind of cool. And that pretty much sums up high school for me. I'm not glad that it's over soon. I'm just looking forward to a good night of sleep. And if there's one thing I've learned from high school is that in order to progress as a person, in order to improve, you must learn from your mistakes. Only then from your failures can you grow some new success. And on that note, please don't fail this project. That's one failure I can really do without. Later.